Good afternoon, Kirkwood patrons. We're so glad to have you for another virtual concert, this time with William Ray, the lead interpreter of the Daniel Boone home in Defiance, Missouri. He's going to be doing some songs and other tunes from the early American period to get us in the mood for fall and even a little bit for All Hallows Eve. So we're glad that he's here with us. Thank you, William. And I'll hand it over to you to get things started.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, friends and neighbors. You know, when I was a little boy, Halloween was my favorite holiday, and fall was my favorite season, and it's still my favorite season. I love how the leaves change. And I love Halloween, the idea that you get to dress up as someone that you're not, and you go around. And the idea that the nights are getting longer and it gets darker earlier, and we start thinking about the things that go bump in the night. And we also think about having bonfires and campfires. And fall is just a great time of year. And for those folks that lived a couple of hundred years ago, fall was really a big deal to them. It was a really busy time. And fall was a time where they made a lot of music. And so that's what we're going to be doing a little bit today is I'm going to play some music, both young and old, that really kind of help us get in the mood for fall. And I'm going to imagine when you think of Halloween, you might think of pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns and maybe even gourds. I'm seeing a lot of painted gourds this year as I go around. And gourds, you know, they're really pretty amazing because you can even use gourds for making your own musical instruments. This is a gourd banjo. This is what the banjo looked like back in the 1830s. And if you ever wanted an instrument that you could grow, you start off with a gourd, start off with a black walnut tree. Actually, you do need to raise a goat as well because that's how you get the head. And then you have your strings, and you get a wonderful, warm sounding instrument there. And this also shows that a couple hundred years ago, you know, people made their own entertainment. And so if they wanted music, they either learned how to make and play an instrument or just sing or caterwaul or whatever they could do. And so it was really homegrown music in the best sense of the word. And so we're going to play a couple of tunes on this gourd banjo. And you know, yesterday here it was really unseasonably warm. And when I woke up this morning, it was pretty cool. So I think maybe the best tune to play is an old fiddle tune that they would have known back then called Cold Frosty Morning as we work our way towards fall. One more time. So as the seasons change, we're going to get more of those cold, frosty mornings, which means that it's going to be for long evenings, and maybe you get a fire going in the fireplace or the wood stove, and you start telling stories. In fact, it's actually pretty cool to be here with the Kirkwood Public Library because they're all in the business of stories. And storytelling is one of our most ancient of arts. And long before television and our computer screens and all that, we as human beings were telling stories. And so a couple hundred years ago, on those long fall nights, they would gather around and they would tell old stories. And in fact, you may have heard of what a ballad is. And a ballad is just a story that's set to song. And I think let's have a ballad now, and it's an old one. And in fact, this might be 500, 600 years old. It's kind of hard to say. And for the early settlers in this nation, the old ballads that they would be singing would have been old to them even. So if you go back to the Robin Hood legend, this is sort of related to that a little bit. Only in a lot of the old ballads, sometimes they would take animals and they would give them human characteristics. And that's really what this one is all about. And because it's autumn and we're getting close to Halloween, I'm not going to sing any happy ballads. There are some happy ballads out there, but we're not going to sing a happy one. We're going to sing a sort of sad one and an old one at that. And it's called Who Killed Cock Robin? And so before I play it, let me just give you the cast of characters real quick so you'll be able to understand what's going on here. So this is all about a wedding between two birds, the robin and the wren, Cock Robin and Jenny Wren. And so it's a wonderful thing. It's going to last forever, except there's a problem because there's another bird, the cuckoo bird, who also had his eyes on Jenny Wren. And so the wedding goes off without a hitch. Everybody's nice and happy, but the cuckoo shows up at the reception and decides he's going to make some trouble. So Cock Robin's best friend is the sparrow. And so the sparrow sees that all this trouble's about to happen. And so he steps up. And right before the cuckoo can make any real trouble, the sparrow decides he's going to go ahead and take his bow and arrow and shoot and try and get the cuckoo to go away. Well, he accidentally misses and he kills the groom. And so the song is all called Who Killed Cock Robin? And what's going on is all the different animals are talking about the funeral. Who's going to do what? And like I say, this is probably about 400, 500, maybe even a little older than that. It's an old English ballad there called Who Killed Cock Robin? And we'll put a little bit of a North American twist by playing it on the old fretless gourd banjo. Well, who killed Cock Robin? I said the sparrow with my little bow and arrow. I killed Cock Robin. Well, who saw him die? I said the fly with my little beady eye. I saw him die. Well, who will dig his grave? I said the crow with my little spade and hoe. I will dig his grave. Well, who will sew his shroud? I said the beetle with my little thread and needle. I will sew his shroud. Well, who will be the parson? I said the lark, if it isn't after dark. I will be the parson. Well, who will take him there? I said the bull, because I can pull. I will take him there. Well, who will weep and moan? I said the wren, my grief will never end. I will weep and moan. So you can imagine on a long fall evening, you can just keep making up verses and it just goes on and on and on. And in fact, there's a much longer version of that. There are many more animals that are involved as well. And that's a good way to spend an evening because you think that if you're in a room that's just lit by a fireplace and just all old candles and you start getting those shadows on the wall, it's really easy to let your imagination run away. And that's part of the beauty of storytelling. So let's get into a little bit also of, again, making your own entertainment and even making your own instruments, such as this. So this right here is what we call a mountain dulcimer or an Appalachian dulcimer. And if you ever wanted to play a stringed instrument but were really too nervous about it, find yourself a good mountain dulcimer and just go right to it. It's a very satisfying instrument and it's got just a beautiful sort of haunting little tune to it there. And not every bit of music that they would play would be complicated, and not everything they would do have 1,000 different verses. Music can be very, very simple and still very satisfying. And in fact, the way that you play these dulcimers, the old way of playing, is the string that's closest to you is where the melody is, and the two strings that are away from you, all they do is just drone. That's their job. That's their gig. And so you take just a regular stick here, a noter stick we call it, and you just run it up and down the fingerboard. It's a lot like just taking one finger and going to a piano, opening it up and just kind of plunking it down and see what happens. So dulcimers were also homemade instruments there, simply made, simply played, as my good friend Tony Ellis likes to say. And so this is also another tune that's simple enough, but you could easily spend an entire evening playing this tune. It's sort of mesmerizing. And it's called Down the River We Go. So we're all at home, and we've got the firelight, we've got the candles, and we keep playing tunes like that. And the kids start getting sleepy, and we put the babies to bed, and it works out nice. It's a calm evening, and the kids get to bed, and the adults start talking, and they start telling stories. And eventually they get to stories that get even a little scarier. The little ones wouldn't want to hear those stories. And there are even ballads with that. And so now that all the kids are gone to bed, we'll have one of those ballads as well. So we had a very early old ballad, but also in North America there were ballads that were composed as well. And just like today, the ballads were all about things that would pique people's interest. And so one of the things that many ballads were all about murder. And so I'm going to give you probably America's most beloved of the murder ballads. This is an old one and a very popular one, but sadly it doesn't end very well for the main character. Her name is Polly, and the name of the ballad is called Pretty Polly. And so do you have your young ones are in bed? They're all the way? Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and do this one because this one might give them some scary dreams. And Pretty Polly, and you know, you hope that it works out, but it just every time I play this ballad, it just ends up the same way for her every single time. We'll see if this changes around. Pretty Polly. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, come go along with me. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, come go along with me. Before we get married, some treasures to see. He led her over hills and valleys so deep. He led her over hills and valleys so deep. When they got there, pretty Polly began to weep. Oh, Willie, I'm afraid of your ways. Oh, Willie, I'm afraid of your ways. Well, the way you've been acting, so strange. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, your guess is about right. Oh, Polly, pretty Polly, your guess is about right. I've been thinking on your face since part of last night. He stabbed her through the heart, and her heart's blood was flow. He stabbed her through the heart, and her heart's blood did flow, and into the grave pretty Polly would go. They took him to the jail, and what did he say? They took him to the jail, city say, like your pretty darling, and try to get away. So then that sort of wakes everybody up just again. And you know, when people wake up, they decide that they still want a little more entertainment, they might go ahead and see which one of them played the fiddle. And they get enough folks for a dance. And so they might clear all the furniture out of the cabin, get the floor all open there, and then have a dance that might go all night long. And even then, even in the fall, you might have fiddle tunes that might have just a little bit of scary edge to them as far as the titles and all of that. And in fact, there is a long history in both the British Isles and in the United States of stories about fiddlers that were convicted of crimes and then they were hung. And in all of these stories, they always talk about how right before they're led up to the scaffolding, they'll play a fiddle tune, and then they'll wait for someone in the audience to step forward and play that tune. And when they don't, they end up busting the fiddle in some of the stories, and no one ever gets to play the tune, and then they go on to their great reward. Well, there are fiddle tunes that are named after some of these fiddlers. McPherson's Rant, Coleman's March, The Last of Callahan, and there's even a French-Canadian tune called The Hangman's Reel. And that's what I'm going to close out with here. Since we're going to have an all-night dance, we better get ready to go here. So let's tune the banjo up. There we go. Lovely. Now we're ready for an all-night dance. I thank you so very much for tuning in. I thank the Kirkwood Public Library for inviting me to play for you. It's been truly my pleasure. And we'll end with this Hangman's Reel, which even though it's got a bit of a dour title, it's actually a pretty peppy little tune. So remember, the fall evenings are coming, and I just invite you to make the most out of them as you can. Enjoy the firelight, the candlelight, the warmth, the telling stories with the young ones, getting to celebrate and dance. So with that, the Hangman's Reel. Have a wonderful autumn and a happy All Hallows Eve.